Hey, with your evening story channel, I post new interesting stories every day. Subscribe and click the bell to not miss it.
Stand up. Court is in session. Nancy struggled to rise for a second and felt dizzy. The girl grasped the iron bars of the cage, kept from falling with one hand, and continued to cling to the bars. The other hand she pressed against her stomach. The baby had only recently begun to move, but today he was on a rampage. Hush, little one, hush. It's not true. They'll sort it out. Her mind refused to accept what was happening. No, this isn't happening to her. It's just a dream. It was a cruel reality. As if through a thick veil, Nancy heard the final phrases of the sentence to be imposed in a general security colony. 8 years as in 8 years. For what? Nancy slowly settled down on the bench. The last thing she saw was her mom's pale face through the bars. She heard her scream, "Nancy, my daughter. Help, she's sick." Nancy woke up in the same cage, the secretary of the court in one hand, Vyaka and Igor in the other, a glass of water. "Well, are you better?" sympathetically asked the girl. She was sincerely worried about today's convict. What a fool. She made a mess of things. Yes. Nancy took a deeper breath. Her mind cleared. The baby in her womb was quiet. It's over. Where's Mom? The process is over. They're here to pick you up. The girl lowered her eyes. Your mom's fine. They just asked everyone to leave. Only then did Nancy see that there were car escorts standing next to the cage. Then the handcuffs clicked on her hands and she was led away. A new life began for Nancy, a life of frightening unknowns. She wasn't originally a criminal and hadn't broken the law, and yet she was still convicted. On the way to the prison, jolting in an old car, the girl recalled again and again the events of the last 5 months. Nancy was returning from a vacation from her mother. Here was the finish line. All that was left was to create and defend her diploma, and she would be a certified food technologist. She's already been offered a job at a confectionery factory, and her boyfriend's gonna propose to her soon. She saw a wedding ring in a box in his desk, and he obviously wants to surprise her. It also feels weird. Started buying a test at the drugstore. No more doubts. She's pregnant. Nancy was the first to share the news with her mom. She was happy for her daughter, but a little anxious. How would Alex react? How to pass exams while pregnant? Nancy laughed. Only Mommy. Everything will be fine. Prepare. Will Uncle Nick and Nick be at our wedding? Uncle Nick is the stepfather who's been living with Mom for 10 years. That day, Mom couldn't see her daughter off, and there was just an urgent pedagogical meeting at work at school. Stepdad was out, being a trucker. Nancy reassured Mom on the phone. Don't worry, Mammy, my bag is light, and I'll walk to the bus station just fine on my own. Mom sighed and agreed, and at the bus station a stranger approached her. Young lady, you're taking this bus to the terminus. The guy nodded at the right bus. After receiving an affirmative answer, he looked at Nancy pleadingly. I'm begging you, take my bag. It's light. The thing is, my mom's sick. She's got some medication in it that she needs. They're very expensive. She can't buy them herself. I've always carried it myself, but today I couldn't get off work. Sure, I'll pass it on. Nancy took the outstretched travel bag. It was really light and quite small. You don't even have to check it in the luggage. The guy was glad. All right, I'll take it to the cabin. And you help me to put mine in the baggage compartment? Asked the girl. Okay. The young man immediately dragged Nancy's bag to the bus. A man will meet you. Will he recognize you by your bag? You write down his phone number just in case. The guy dictated a number to Nancy. The girl entered it into her cell phone. The joyful guy ran off on his own, and Nancy got on the bus. 10 minutes later, the bus started. The city greeted them with a fine snow, only just coming on when the streetlights came on. Nancy was one of the last to get off the bus at the bus station. She was immediately approached by a service dog of the police officers who, for some reason, they were greeting the passengers. Is the girl your bag? No, it's not mine. I was asked to deliver some medicine here. The policeman snorted incredulously. The bag was opened, and in it were some sachets that didn't look like pharmacy drugs. And then it started spinning. Nancy was arrested. There was an investigation. The girl told the truth, but they didn't believe her. They demanded she give up her partners. What accomplices? Nancy had only heard such words in movies, but it wasn't like the movies. The phone number the stranger dictated to her didn't exist. A guy, was there a guy? For months, the girl was in a detention center. From there, she managed to send a message to her lover saying, "Save me. You have powerful parents. You need a good lawyer." One day, she was told that someone had come to see her. Nancy flew from cell to meeting room on wings. Alexei came to rescue her, but she was met by his mother, Wendy. "Where's Alex?" Nancy was confused. Alex couldn't make it. Wendy wrinkled his nose. "And this is the first and last time I'm here. What did you want with my son?" "I wrote in everything." Nancy felt the ground slipping from under her feet. "I explained everything about what happened to me. It was a misunderstanding. I'm not to blame for anything." "Oh," how she sang. Wendy grinned. "Not my fault my son can't have anything to do with criminals. Forget it, and don't bother us again. You're on your own." "I'm having a baby," shouted Nancy, following Wendy back toward the door. "It's Alex's baby. That's how we'll handle it." Over her shoulder, the woman threw herself and walked out. Nancy was left alone with her problems. Mom couldn't hire a good lawyer on a teacher's salary. Stepdad was completely indifferent to his wife and stepdaughter's problems. The accomplices were never found. The investigator diligently pursued the case. It turned out that Nancy regularly shuttled and delivered drugs from town to town. Where she took them, who she gave them to, she refused to say. And the court gave her 8 years. In the zone, everything was not as terrible as Nancy thought. The pregnant newcomer was received kindly by her cellmates. There was no harsh pressure here, no frightening fights, just their own rules and regulations. Nancy realized that she had to live by them now. True, she said that they would sort it out by mistake and let her out. To which the other convicts replied, "Don't get your hopes up. Get used to the idea that you will have a child here for a long time until he is 3 years old, and then you'll get out on parole. And don't even think about the fact that they'll sort it out. Your case is already closed," and Nancy was getting used to it. She sewed a robe and sang songs with everyone. She had the indulgence of being pregnant, but no more. Nancy was 9 months pregnant when a letter arrived from home, written by her stepfather. He informed her that her mom had been fired from her job. Since she couldn't raise her own, she would teach someone else. The neighbors turned their backs. Every night she cried, worried about her daughter, and one day she had a heart attack. The ambulance didn't make it. Mom died. After reading this letter, Nancy felt a sharp pain in her abdomen. She went into labor. "What kind of hospital?" shouted the prison paramedic to the warden, who was immediately informed that Nancy was in labor, and he called the escorts to take the girl to the hospital. "She's not gonna make it. Can you deliver the baby?" The warden wasn't a bad man, but he was also used to doing things by the book. Roughly, but essentially, answered the paramedic, and she really helped. Nancy on the daughter was born without complications. Tiny wrinkles and a lump. The paramedic placed the girl on Nancy's stomach immediately after the birth. "How small?" Nancy cried. And then she got worried. "What's with the raiders? Where's the paramedic?" "Looked surprised at the baby." "Don't worry, they're moles." "Got your little girl is marked." And there were 2 tiny moles on her left cheek, one on top of the other. There's no mistaking a mark like that. Nancy gently kissed those tiny dots. God and marked. God, take care of her. To do. Nancy stayed in the sanitarium, and in the morning, the doctor from the maternity hospital arrived and glumly examined the baby's mother. "So there's nothing wrong with the woman in labor. Can't she stay with you?" "But we're taking the baby away." "Why? Fear?" Nancy asked. "Well, first of all, we have to do all the blood tests, take the vaccinations put. And secondly, I don't like the baby. Could be birth trauma." "What kind of trauma?" It was easy, wasn't it? The confused paramedic easily snickered about the doctor. "You're telling me this to a doctor with 30 years' experience. How long have you been in medicine? 2nd year?" The paramedic was confused. "Don't argue with me." The doctor wrapped the child in a blanket and carried her to the exit. "And what will she eat there?" Nancy cried out in despair. "What kind of question is that, Mom? Our formula is quite decent. You'd think about what the baby would eat before coming in here." "Merciless," said the doctor and left the room. Until evening, Nancy lay staring at the ceiling. Daughter, how is she? Felcher Vera, quietly came in to see her when it was almost night outside the window. "Nancy, I got a call from the maternity hospital about my little girl." Nancy jumped up abruptly and immediately lay back on the bed in pain. "Nancy, she's dead, died on the way to the hospital." Nancy cried silently at first, then sobs burst from her chest. Faith cried with her. "Nancy, I'm sorry, I did something wrong," Vera said, wiping away her tears. "Don't punish yourself. Please." Nancy suddenly calmed down and said firmly, "We both know that everything went right. It's God's way. He just took everyone I loved away from me. Just why he punished me like that." And that was the unanswered question. And Nancy wasn't expecting one. After that terrible night, she replaced all her feelings. Just lived by the rules of prison life. 5 years went by like that. And one day her boss called her in. "What's up? Did you get your parole application approved? You're free tomorrow." "What tomorrow?" Nancy was confused. "You want to stay with us a little longer?" The warden smiled. "You what?" "I didn't think so." "Go on. Pack your things," saying goodbye to the girls. The day after tomorrow, the prison doors opened before the girl freedom. But where will she go now? Home to her native village. In her mother's apartment, she was met by a fat, red-haired aunt. "Cole, come here, there's a girl here." She shouted into the back of the apartment. Not letting Nancy even across the threshold, scornfully looking at the girl's plain clothes, Nancy got free. "What's so fast?" "Nancy, this is my apartment. I've been doing all the paperwork for a while. You were discharged." "How did you get discharged?" "It's my mom's apartment." Nancy's mom's eyes got dark. "Who renovated it? Paid the utilities?" "While you were on vacation." Stepdad got bold. "Get out of here." "Didn't you hear me? Get out." Shouted at the girl fat ear. From this shout, Nancy shuddered as from a blow. She turned around and walked away. She used the last of her money to buy a ticket to the city. Maybe she could get a job there, as a janitor. At least they'd give her a place to live. The city did not welcome the girl. She went around several offices, nowhere the former did not want to hire. She spent the night in the park on a bench. Nancy had been wandering aimlessly around the city since morning. Hunger made her dizzy with resentment in her heart. She's nobody and her name is nothing. Even her mom's apartment wasn't hers anymore. Why should she live? She wants to go to her mom, to her daughter. She saw this bridge from afar and walked towards it with one goal, to climb it. And then, like a bird, to fling herself like a stone down into the raging river below. A few seconds and all will be over. Nancy walked and looked at that bridge. Here was the crossing leading to it. Suddenly, 3 feet away from the girl, a child's ball galloped with swift bounces. He found himself in the roadway. Immediately, a little girl about 4 years old rushed after him from the sidewalk. Brakes squealing, people screaming. Seconds more and the car would be crushed, the child unable to slow down. Nancy was ahead of these seconds of the tigress, and she tore after. It Chenko and grabbed her and pulled her toward her. Nancy came to her senses on the sidewalk, still clutching the girl to her with force. All around her, people were applauding her, scolding the neck-rubbing mother who had been distracted for a moment. And it almost led to tragedy. "Auntie, let me go," shyly asked the girl. "Ah, yes." Little Nancy gave birth with a hard finger, and the child rushed to her mother. "Daughter," and hoarse from excitement voice, exhaled the mother. "Where on earth have you gone?" "There my ball died." "Nickel a girl, I'll buy you 10 of them," the woman cried, kissing her daughter. And then she looked at Nancy. "Girl, you're our guardian angel. I'll pray to all the gods for you." "Thank you. It's nothing." Nancy shrugged her shoulders. She herself only now began to realize what misfortune she had prevented. The women got to talking, and Helen and her daughter Sophia lived here. They had recently moved from the capital. Their apartment was nearby. They went out for bread. And there was this story. "I'm always at work. And Sophia goes to kindergarten. But I still don't have time for anything," Helen said. And then she looked carefully at Nancy. "Let's go to my housekeeper." Nancy decided not to hide anything. You hardly want to see in your house, especially next to your child, a former bunny, which I am without a fixed place of residence. But it's not my fault. I foolishly went to jail, trusted a stranger. That's how Helen threw the girl a look. I don't think it's all that bad. Anyway, come with us. We'll live to see. So Nancy began to help Helen around the house. The girl told her story. Helen was sure she couldn't leave things like this. Now she would straighten things out a bit on the farm and ask her lawyer to take care of Nancy's problems. At least the apartment had to be dealt with. I mean, she's out on parole. You have to check in with the police. A week went by. One day Nancy, coming back from the store, saw Alex. He was walking down the street with a bright blonde, next to Sophia, a girl the same age as him, 4 years old. So when Nancy was doing time for nothing and carrying his child under her heart, he was already making love with another girl stepped toward him. Well, hello, darling, you'll find out. Nancy looked at Alex with defiance. I see you've got things going well. The baby, Nancy's wife. Alex turned pale. What did you want me to carry your gears for you? If you want to know, I wasn't going to marry you then. I already had a fiancée, did she? Nancy nodded in the direction of the completely frightened blonde, and she just let me pass. Stay out of our lives. Alex pushed the girl aside and pulled the girl behind him. It was only then that Nancy glanced at the child. A girl, blonde curls, chubby cheeks, and on the left cheek 2 tiny moles, one on top of the other. You couldn't mistake a mole like that for anything. Nancy's eyes darkened as she stared at the baby girl. Daughter, you're alive. Have I been deceived? Then who? Why are they doing something to me? He and his wife disappeared into the crowd of passers-by, and Nancy stood stunned for about 10 minutes, then slowly walked home to Helen. Helen had gotten off early that day. Nancy's stricken look immediately raised a lot of questions. Nancy told everything, including her guesses. Helen decided to act immediately and called her lawyer. Benjamin had been practicing for about 10 years. He was immediately reassuring to Nancy. A month later, the case was so big that half of the police departments, the city and drug squads, investigators, and forensic experts were on the alert. The DA's office was paying attention too. And all thanks to the information that Benjamin could find, it turns out that then 5 years ago, his cursed bad was to meet Alex's acquaintance and give it to him. At the last moment, he learned that the police would be checking passengers and fled the bus station. The fact that Nancy had the bag was purely coincidental, although by that time, Alex had already was meeting with his son, and the arrest of Nancy only made it easier for him. He didn't have to explain himself to the girl. And the drugs? He's still dealing drugs. Benjamin managed to find out about it from his wife Alex because they smelled something fishy. She told everything and gave them all up, just to get away with it. And the girl has already done her best. Alex's mom bribed the doctors at the maternity hospital and everything was arranged. So the girl was listed as an abandoned child. Then they easily adopted her. But as it is not the business of the native granddaughter in prison to grow up, where the grandfather in the mayor's office works, and the mother in the Department of Education, and the zone was informed that the child had died. It was a high-profile case in the city. More than one boss lost his sweet spot, arrests followed, and Nancy was eventually exonerated. She was also subpoenaed in the Alex case. And after the hearing, she went up to his mother. Wendy, you once told me that you came to prison the first and last time. You were wrong was then. Now you'll go there regularly, and if you don't go to jail yourself. Wendy looked confused, as Nancy had looked at her then. And the girl wasn't her pity, not at all. She was able to hold her daughter in her arms after a few months. While all the courts of inquiry were passing, the girl immediately threw herself on her neck and whispered, Mommy, I knew you weren't dead. The daughter clung even tighter to her mom. And then Benjamin was able to get Nancy's apartment back. But she decided not to return to her hometown. There's nothing for a promising lawyer like Benjamin to do in a working-class town. Nancy and Benjamin married 6 months after all these events and brought up their daughter together. Nancy was finally happy. It's happiness she suffered for.